Hey there, welcome to episode 111 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, the managing director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at just about 9:50, about 8 or 9 minutes before 10 a.m. on April 1st. I'm not kidding. April 1st, that's a Tuesday in 2025. Today we're going to speak about, we're going to be trying to be clever. We'll be talking talks and more. Talks.Vegas is one of our community elevation projects that has been kind of sitting, waiting on a back burner somewhere. So we'll see if we can get that going. And some more of those types of things that are on our to-do list. If you're not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, we are a Nevada nonprofit corporation, a 501c3 public charity. Our purpose statement on file with those entities is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. A fairly generic purpose statement so that we don't try to convince people that we are only coding. That was one of the problems with the original name of our organization, Code for Vegas Foundation. So innovation can take many forms. We want to have ideas. We want to be inventive about solving the problems that come up when we discuss our ideas, and then we want to implement them so that other people can benefit from all that ideation and innovation. And we want to make our communities better. Our communities don't necessarily have to be in the Vegas area. Innovation can take many forms, and it can cast a wide net, can draw in many ideas, a lot of innovation, and can, by implementing far and wide, elevate communities anywhere. So we'll see if we can make that happen. Hopefully, wherever you found your audio programs like this one, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains show notes, a summary that I will read to you in those show notes, and the 4 links. I can link to some other things, but today I'm going to keep it pretty light because I have a lot of things to cover. So just the 4 links today. So let's get to it. The summary of today's episode. Let me get some water real quick here. All right. The summary of today's episode then. It has been a while since we touched on our community elevation initiatives that are pure outreach. That is, these are initiatives that will launch as part of Innovate for Vegas Foundation, maybe drive some donations, and if all goes well, or all goes to plan, offer some utility to our local communities. So let's talk about initiatives like talks. But first, the links for today's episode: Innovate for Vegas Foundation homepage at innovateforvegas.org. Innovate FOR Vegas, no punctuation in there. Then a period, then org, O-R-G. That's our homepage. You'll find information about what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish. Our board of directors and members, contact information, our, what else is on there? Our meeting gatherings calendar with our, so far, 2 usually weekly online gatherings to talk about our initiatives, a little bit more of a technical or detailed discussion. And then Thursdays is our office hours to just talk about civic volunteerism and general, high altitude, what's up, what's going down chats, hopefully with people from beyond the Vegas area. But of course, people in Vegas are also welcome. The state of affairs with civic volunteerism is to be determined. So more discussions far and wide might be a good thing. Well, we'll find out over time. Next up, projectact.info, project-act, ACT, period, info. That's our autonomous cohort tessellation initiative, Project Act, and also known as autonomous cohort transformation. There are a few things that could happen in there somewhere for the transformation side. It's basically, hey, so suppose you come to our office hours on a Thursday and you're thinking about starting your own cohort of people that want to volunteer to work on community elevating projects or initiatives. Come on down. And then maybe the transformation side of Project Act could be useful. It definitely needs some work. We need to make it more useful. And I'll say right now, Project Act, the transformation side became slightly less interesting when Code for America sunset their brigade program, because now no one needed to move away from Code for America to become an independent brigade or former brigade. Now everybody did that. So the transformation step at the same time is more important because there's no guiding light in the form of Code for America, you can strike out on your own, or you could ask around for some help and see what happens. And so we're going to see about transformation from no one or nothing, I suppose, to a functional cohort of civic volunteers. So we'll see how that goes. And the tessellation is all about discovery, so that we might enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration between cohorts of one or more people near and far on civic volunteer projects or anything else. So it's a big lift. We'll see what we can do with that one. agileforvolunteers.org, agile, AGILE, FOR, volunteers, all one word, no punctuation. Agile for Volunteers, and then a period, .org, volunteers.org. The agile methodology is not popular with some people, often because of the agile industrial complex. Agile for volunteer, that is people making money by coaching and making it overly complicated, and then project managers using it as something that it was not intended to be used for. And that you can get directly from the people who invented agile initially in February of 2001, although it has been developing in some ways ever since. Agile for Volunteers is a volunteer take on agile. Two key components. One, not full-time employees. So how to ask for a contribution of time, effort, and expertise, and how to make the most of that is one of the fundamental goals of Agile for Volunteers. And two, not everyone is a coder. Agile was initially invented by and for software engineers, developers, programmers. Not everybody is that thing. So that was part of our name change. Code for Vegas became Innovate for Vegas, specifically because innovation can take so many forms. Agile for Volunteers will aim to maximize the value, the return on investment of individual volunteer time, effort, and expertise to make real outcomes. Those can be based on code or not code. I hate to simplify things in that way, but hey, what do you want? I'm a software engineer, but not everything is code. And because I'm a software engineer, I'll tell you, there's a lot more to it than the software stuff. So ideally, Agile for Volunteers will help us to connect all manner of skills and interests and abilities, and connect those with the tasks and requirements and desires of our various initiatives, and the drive of those by our end user customers, the people in our communities. So Agile for Volunteers will endeavor to accomplish quite a bit to make the most of volunteers. Finally, Mastodon for Vegas. Mastodon.Vegas is our always on the back burner, but coming soon, always coming soon, Mastodon server for a geo-focused social media platform here in Vegas, part of our information sharing strategy to make a more informed, smarter smart city. So we'll see when we get that going. I do talk about this a little bit more in today's episode, which is not only about talks, but is certainly going to start with talks. So first of all, talks.vegas. The idea here was simple. We reached out to the Ignite Talks people. If you're not familiar with Ignite, it's a 20 slides, 15 seconds per slide. So 5 minutes presentation. The timer doesn't stop. So you kind of have to talk along with a slide deck that is kind of shown behind you usually. Excuse me, a little water. It's getting warm here in Vegas. So Ignite Talks are a little bit higher energy. You're not lingering too long. Your slides should be illustrative, not text documents that require 20 minutes to read or distract from the speaker and so on. So it's an entire format and a little bit of a culture that's developed around it. So we reached out to the Ignite people, to see about rebooting Ignite Vegas, which was a thing during the downtown project days. So 2013, 14, 15, a couple of years in there. But their policy seemed a bit draconian, I have to be honest. So we withdrew from that discussion and decided we could consider launching something a bit more generic. When I say draconian, they would gate any releases of videos or any publications. They required a nominal licensing fee. That was not the big thing, but too much control over the content, too much protection of their brand. Now, that's up to them. So this is not an attack on Ignite Talks. It was simply not a compatible approach to how we wanted to do things. So the idea with Talks is to provide a place which focuses on the people of a locality, so in our case, Vegas, as a platform through which they might share their stories. This is not too far off from Ignite Talks, but we control the brand, which is a little bit looser. We're open source thinkers. The goal is not to pitch startups or sell products, but to share those stories intended to educate, enlighten, or entertain, or maybe some of all three. No, educate is not the same as enlighten, just to set your mind at ease. I can provide an educational talk about making espresso, for example, or I can provide an enlightening talk about my experiences tasting espressos in Italy. Two different things. Or I could provide an entertaining story about that time I spilled espresso at a coffee shop and the hilarity that ensued. By going our own way, we keep doors open for different formats, like lightning talks, which resemble in some way TED-style presentations. They can go maybe 20 minutes or maybe even longer. Similar format, but doesn't have to be. So lightning talks a little bit more flexible. We don't have to worry about TED or TEDx exerting their own controls and brand protection desires, which they're free to do that stuff, but we can open up the gates a bit and try some new ideas. We have Pecha Kucha. Pecha Kucha talks resemble Ignite format. These are 20 slides at 20 seconds per slide rather than 15, as is true with Ignite. We can also choose whether we make the format a hard line or if we value the presentation and presenter over the rules. For example, I gave in my conversation with Ignite, the example I gave in my conversation with Ignite revolved around anyone who may not be able to, for example, speak or move in such a way as they can reliably complete each slide in the time allotted. They were a hard line. Ignite favors the rules, we favor humans. So if someone has a story to tell and they want to make a presentation and they choose to follow the rules, that's great. The example I gave in this discussion was if we have, say, a disabled veteran who cannot speak quite clearly, do we want to hear what that person has to say? Absolutely. Are we going to check the stopwatch and make sure they're under 20 seconds at every turn? Maybe not. And we have the freedom to do that. So that was one of the primary drivers. Also, the fact that we get to determine what and how we publish. So a little bit of self-determinism. The Talks platform itself could be applied elsewhere. We happen to have the talks.vegas domain, so we would obviously focus on people in Vegas or near Vegas, greater Vegas. But hopefully what we end up building will enable anyone anywhere to do something similar. Talk about community elevation. Let's hear from the people in the communities. Do they have to be celebrities? No. Do they have to be famous in any other ways? No. And sometimes you get that with a TEDx or similar talk where you gotta be someone. And here in Greater Vegas, we have lots of people who are someone. Just not everybody knows it yet. Challengers. This is one that I actually have a special interest in myself. It's another practical pursuit. The Challengers platform. Challengers with an S, and that's important. It's aimed squarely at recognizing and celebrating people. Let me fix a little typo here. Okay. Squarely at recognizing and celebrating people, probably student age, tending younger, but doesn't have to be, whatever student age really is, who take part in, say, for examples, these are only examples, there are more, Congressional Apps Challenge, or the Congressional Art Competition, or NASA Space Apps Challenge. You can hear challenge showing up a couple of times there. Various other challenges that happen through any given year. These could be company hackathons, sponsored challenges, sponsored meaning there might be a cash prize or there might be some other sort of, the notion of winning, placing and showing. So it's a sort of a competitive type of thing. And often these are they last more than a typical hackathon, which is usually like a weekend, 40, 48, 50 hours. So sometimes challenges can last weeks or months, like the Congressional App Challenge, for one example. I believe their signups will be starting soon. No, not soon. The signups for this year will be starting in a couple of months. Let me tell you exactly. Let me pull this up. Congressional App Challenge. They have their own website. Congressional Apps Challenge. We get the pre-register. So pre-registering you can do now. The deadline will be in October to submit your project in October 2025. But right now you can pre-sign up, pre-register. So actual registration will be sometime in the summer, if I recall correctly. So that's basically a couple of months that a student might have. Go figure, students during the summer having something to do. How lovely. So Nevada has participants. Typically we have all 4 of our congressional members sponsor or sign up for the task. The Congressional App Challenge does require a particular district for each state. So if you're a congressperson in your district sponsors the Congressional App Challenge, then the students in that district can participate. And I believe they do. Yeah, they aim at high school students, I believe, or younger. I think it's high school, maybe younger. We'll talk about this more as the challenge actually approaches. The take home, though, is this. If I can return to my notes, these are often underpublicized. That is absolutely the case here in Vegas. So those interested in participating may not know about them. Congressional Apps Challenge, NASA Space Apps Challenge, a little bit better known. Congressional Art Challenge or Art Competition, not as well known. There are plenty of challenges and competitions, and not everything is coding. So there are things that are art oriented or some other forms of creativity or STEM challenges and things. There's tons of stuff going on that we often don't hear about on the sign up side, and we definitely don't hear about who participated. Certainly those who do participate do not make the front page of a typical mainstream media presentation, especially here in Vegas. Yet these people who take the time, put in the effort, and sometimes win if the challenge is competitive, play an important part in the present and future of an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. If you think you have one and you don't have anyone participating in these things, that's maybe you have some work to do. Recognizing and celebrating are important and rarely happen in a high-profile way. We aim to change that. So in other words, and I have spoken to a vanishingly small number of reporters here in the greater Vegas area. Occasionally you'll see a reporter do a 2-minute video segment on a TV, a news channel, a special interest or human interest. Some local high school students won a hackathon or a challenge of some sort. Those are not above the fold. They are not getting the attention. They're just a side note. Oh, yep, that happened. Okay, on to the next. Which casino is getting torn down or built, or which professional sports team, or which crime has been committed, and so on and so on and so on. So we really don't have a place to recognize and celebrate the people who are doing these things. We should make that a high-profile destination for the people who want to sign up so they can find out about these things. And then the people who are just curious, hey, I wonder if the youth of Vegas look at this. Look at all this cool stuff they're accomplishing. How neat. I'm not kidding. Challenges, not challengers. Challenges may not be hackathon format. They could be anything. The Congressional App Challenge, for example, as I said, lasts for weeks, and sign up to project. Let's start over. Lasts for weeks from sign up to project submission for consideration. So again, the projects are submitted in October sometime. I think it's the second half of October usually. So the competition itself, the work can be done for weeks prior. Challenges often have, who wrote this stuff? Challenges often have a prize or are generally competitive, though the participation is a valuable experience. So it's not only about the prize. We're not only going to feature winners. So that in the example I gave earlier, a reporter talks to the winning team of a local high school here in Vegas, but why not in some way make the population aware to make this information available to the general population that here are people who are participating. They're taking a chance. They're spending their time. How do they spend their weekend? Oh, look, somebody went to a hackathon for a weekend. Or, oh, look, somebody spent 6 weeks working on an application or a new presentation or some creative work, or look at this art gallery of their work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they don't necessarily have to have a prize, but some do, and some have a competitive element in general. And so participation is valuable just to be a part of it, because that is part of the valuable life experience they get. Winning isn't everything. Not to be confused with our monthly hackathon meetups, by the way. We used to have them, and we should have them again someday. or pure hackathons in general, which tend to be more about the journey and learning experience, a distinction without a difference perhaps. But challengers, our initiative, is definitely about the challenges and then the challengers who take part in them that take place through the given year. And then the people that take part in them, of course, as I just said. I should read my own notes sometimes. The Mastodon initiative. Now, we've had the mastodon.vegas domain name for a while now. Those things are expensive. The idea remains to deploy a branded ActivityPub-based social media server. That's what Mastodon is. Twitter replacement is being a little bit reductive. It's a little bit different. But for our geographical area, basically to make modernity a part of the information sharing environment in the greater Vegas area that we are pursuing. Mastodon is itself an open source platform developed by a third-party nonprofit entity based in Germany, although now they're still based in Germany, but they have a U.S. nonprofit 501c3 charity organization here in the U.S. so that they are actually able to conduct business, accept donations, and so on as a United States charitable organization. So that's convenient for them. Mastodon itself is becoming popular and more popular over time. And because of its open protocols and open platform status, it's an interesting thing to fit into our overall strategy of information sharing at city scale. So MyMuni and the Welcome initiatives that we also have in our portfolio of things to do. The idea is to offer an open alternative to commercial platforms that may become politically charged or even problematic in some ways. Content moderation is always a headache. A geocentric platform can maintain focus on our oasis in the desert while interoperating with other ActivityPub platforms out in the world. That's how Mastodon and by extension all ActivityPub platforms work. They can interoperate. You can follow one person on Mastodon even though you're on Threads mostly. So Threads is also an ActivityPub implementation of sorts by Instagram. So to some degree, the limits of their ActivityPub implementation make it not completely 100% interoperable, but it's close enough for now. Given the prevalence of Instagram in the creator economy of Vegas, this is probably interesting to be able to cross over that bridge. But generally speaking, ActivityPub makes possible a lot of things, a lot of ways to follow and subscribe and keep track of that are not so easy to do in highly siloed platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, etc. So we would love to see a more open and interoperable information sharing environment for a smarter smart city. Governance of the deployment would be something of a challenge if content moderation becomes an issue, and it always does. And if we can make Mastodon.Vegas, a high-profile communication platform here in Greater Vegas, we would almost certainly need to deal with the usual collection of content and interaction issues that we all see from the outside all the time. That is to say, people attacking each other verbally, doxing each other, which can lead to, like sharing personal contact information, addresses, and so on, which can lead to in real world interactions, not the good kind, and people can just post horrible, hateful things and so on. So it might be a can that we are ready to open or maybe not ready to open. We'll see. So we see these things from the outside. So by hosting this platform here in Vegas, it might be some work to do to maintain and manage these interactions. I say that in that context, like to make sure that we provide a safe and high utility component to our information sharing plans for the greater Vegas area. We wouldn't want to make it a full-time job to prevent people from hating each other, from saying horrible and arguably illegal things sometimes. So that is on the list, but there are some considerations to make about how we do it and what we end up with and so on. So it's not a decision to be taken lightly, and we have a lot of things higher on the to-do list. So Mastodon. The FOR initiative. Yeah, it's that simple. FOR. FOR. Before we renamed our organization, we had the Forkening, which was a split in a public-facing presence between literally Code 4, so Code FOR, Code 4, one word, and Create 4, Create FOR, Create 4, one word, One word as in no spaces. It's 2 words. .vegas. So we had the two domains, code4.vegas and create4.vegas. The idea was to have 2 entrances to the same building, so to speak, to attract the non-coders that were maybe pushed away by our Code for Vegas Foundation name, a part of the legacy of the original Code for Vegas. So we stuck with the original name. We rebooted our organization as an independent Nevada nonprofit corporation, a 501c3 nonprofit, charity. The 1 building, 2 entrances. In my presentation that I made to people about this, I don't know if you know this, but Taco Bell and KFC are owned by the same company. They own a lot of companies. So I found a picture of a single restaurant location. One side of the building had an entrance to Taco Bell. The other side of the building had an entrance to KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. When you went in the doors, you were in the same dining room. So you could go up to the counter and you could order from either menu and so on. So 2 entrances, but you end up all together anyway. Rather than limiting ourselves to those 2 entrances, though, why not open up the possibilities with a general .vegas domain, which we did. So we have FOR.Vegas, and then use the subdomain approach to deploy utilities in that domain. For example, we could still have a create subdomain to recreate that early approach to inviting more people to participate in our civic volunteer initiatives. So it would simply be create.for.vegas. We could do that. We can open up the floodgates even farther or further to community elevation ideas. For example, we had some interest at some point in pursuing a volunteer platform for general volunteering. The people that were interested in that disappeared, of course. So that's unfortunate. But not far off from the challengers platform in features and goals, we would certainly launch volunteer for Vegas, volunteer.for.Vegas, to make volunteerism in general more visible and perhaps help with coordination. So this would be, we would focus on challengers as its own platform, but Volunteer for Vegas might be a way to recognize and celebrate people who do volunteer their time for community elevation just in general. We're talking food drives, we're talking roadside cleanup, we're talking, the list is endless. And if only there were a place to go where we could find out more information about this. And there are organizations around Vegas who do some of these things, and they may have a website, they may publicize what they're doing. Hard to discover these things in Vegas because just like our challengers, people who volunteer their time are not as exciting from the local media perspective. So you really don't get much news coverage, certainly not what is often deserved. So at the very least, Volunteer for Vegas would be a great way to highlight the activities of other nonprofit organizations, other charities, other volunteer groups, anything, just to raise awareness, to make things discoverable. Obviously, also, this would be it would be an open path towards community elevation in general for Greater Vegas, whether it's volunteers or anything else. So people that are doing things for the Greater Vegas area, that's the idea. Kind of open-ended, purposely vague, because we don't want to say like, oh, it's only Volunteer for Vegas. So building these things, always a challenge. As with all of our initiatives we are driving, a certain amount of cross-functionality should make deploying these ideas a bit easier. And easy and easier are words to be taken lightly in anything nowadays. I use the easy word to indicate that it will only take one lifetime, not multiple. But rather than reinventing the wheel, or perhaps building on a platform like WordPress, which is often a suggestion, just use WordPress. We can take the contributions of civic volunteers and deploy them in useful ways in general, fit them together, build on those to launch other ideas, and so on. That's the concept that we're driving in general at Innovate for Vegas Foundation. I'm throwing around all these Vegas names now, but gotta be careful. Don't want to confuse. They're all our properties, so that's cool. It looks good on the resume if we can have people working on these things and they all fit together. Ideally, at some point, we'll have challengers and Volunteer for Vegas and Talks Vegas, and there will be people telling their stories and whatnot, and we'll be high enough profile for our 40 million annual visitors so that someone at some point will say, did you work on that stuff? And some young person looking for a job will say, oh yes, I'm also featured on the Challengers website for my participation in this hackathon. I gave a talk on something and I want, all these things all fit together on a resume, but also out in the real world, which I think will be nice. Yes, Mastodon is an existing open source project that we hope to integrate with and deploy. We do not need to reinvent all wheels. The protocols that it uses, though, are to be natively built into, say, the MyMuni and Welcome initiatives. These are two of our own self-driven initiatives. So we have total control over what we're doing with those. And if we can interoperate with a very, very popular and already existing platform like Mastodon using open protocols and so on, then that's a win for us. And also a win for our communities that can make use of tools that they may already be familiar with and tools that we are inventing ourselves. This differs from building on something like WordPress, which is often a suggestion, as I mentioned. It's more of an integration exercise, especially if one simply says, oh, there are plugins that do this. And there are websites deployed in Vegas that are trying to do things like coordinating calendars and so on. They deploy a WordPress site. They use a WordPress event calendar plugin. The calendar plugin is really awful. And you end up with something that just doesn't quite work. Well, why not take the innovation mindset and apply some creativity, some ideation, innovation, and implementation, and come up with things that work based on existing protocols and new ideas? Sounds pretty good. WordPress is becoming a little bit controversial over the last year or so yet more reason to not base our future on a fraught platform and its controversies. We're aiming at innovation after all, not that. While all these are Vegas-centric, all the things I've talked about today and most of our initiatives, because we're in Vegas, they're all, everything I've talked about today and more, they're all free from any specific Vegas dependencies. Talks.Vegas, aside from the domain name, could exist anywhere once it's deployed, and that becomes apparent. And part of the model that we propose is that people from other places should be able to participate in these initiatives so that when we have Talks.Vegas running, the underlying platform, tools, methods, software, promotional, anything we do for that would hopefully be portable enough so that someone in Middle America, on a coast, in another country could say, oh, we could apply this to what we want to accomplish to try to elevate our own communities. So nothing about Talks.Vegas, nothing about the Talks initiative is Talks specific other than the deployment as Talks.Vegas, if that makes sense. So yeah, nothing about Talks in and of itself is like, oh, by the way, you have to be at the convention center on Paradise, or you have to be at there's no Vegas elements that would be required. You don't have to be in Vegas to innovate for Vegas, as I like to tell people. Same goes for our projects and initiatives. They are not inherently Vegas only. Now that could change, by the way, if some local organization, agency, and so on said, hey, we'd like to work on a project that is specifically Vegas. Well, yeah, okay, well, we could do that, although the world will be a better place if we think on a larger scale. We can solve a local problem, but then someone else might have that local problem. So we don't have to think about only our local problem. We can think about, how would someone solve or address this in a general way so that we could reuse what we're doing elsewhere? So deploying these things, though, that's more fun because you have to build them first. And if we have no building, we have no people building. We have no deploying. Obviously, we need to have stuff to deploy. So the idea is to have these platforms deployed with our name on them somewhere and the names of all contributors. Of course, that's our policy. You contribute, you get attribution. That is the way it works. To drive donations to fuel our efforts in general. That would be a nice thing. That is not to say that it is all about the money. Not at all. Aside from the money to host Mastodon, for example, if it becomes successful, our costs, and we haven't done that yet, so that's a projected caution. Our costs have been near zero for our 3 years of existence so far, going mostly to domain name registrations and renewals and our annual paperwork filings with the state of Nevada. It's about $50 a year, the annual list filing. Donations would enable things like hackathon snacks when we get back to that, costs associated with running talks, if we can get out into the real world and invite people to tell their stories, and so on. So it isn't about donation so much as about the growth into more community elevation enabled by them. And I will remind you, listener, that we are 100% volunteer. I, as the managing director, get no pay whatsoever. We are uninured by the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. Nobody gets paid for anything. Hackathon snacks, one could argue, is some sort of compensation, but wow, that's not the kind of conversation people should be having. So if we can reach the point where we have either donation monies, or if we can have events and have food donated to the charity for the purposes of making the hackathon a little bit less hunger game driven, that would be great. Talks has a real world component, for example, to continue that example. And while venues and snacks could be donated to the larger cause, hopefully, media production is not so easy to find as donations, mostly of time. Paying people for their time and efforts is not out of bounds for external services. And hey, cameras and lights and whatnot are not free. So even if someone says, hey, I'd like to donate my time and participate in capturing the talks presentation so we can publish them to various online outlets, that person has expenses and so on. So we can only ask, but we certainly cannot require that people donate everything all the time. So having some funds available through donations and other sponsorships to enable some of these things would be great. We do not need to participate in we do need to participate in our local economy in some ways that are not civic volunteerism. Sometimes it's just paying people or paying for things. And now back to work. Enough about these. We have plenty of potential upside for our communities here in Greater Vegas and beyond, because our focus is on any community elevation. It could be here, it could be anywhere else. We happen to be in Vegas, of course, and through the year, we have about 40 million visitors, according to the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. A great opportunity to show off some accomplishments here and there. Our vantage point is exactly that, but we do hope to invite others to work on these ideas from their own vantage points, from their own localities, to elevate their own communities. If you are in a locality such as LA or Tulsa or Miami, or I'm just naming big cities, but if you are in a small city, or if you have a cohort of 1 or 2 people, you may have big plans as we do, but don't have the people participating as yet. So what if you could look out beyond your local borders and say, oh, people in Vegas or people in other cities are collaborating on things that we could use in our locality. Why not? Why can't we work with them? So the more that is open source and open to collaboration, the more we can leverage our smaller numbers into greater outcomes by working together. Sounds good. We have big plans, but small participation. I think that's a common theme from what I'm hearing in different parts of the United States anyway. Our future may be somewhere in the middle between big plans and small participation. Hopefully we can get hopefully more participation at least. As we enter year 4 in July 2025, July 1st, we hope to give more people a reason to take notice of what civic volunteers have to offer to their local communities and to the world. Some of the things I have mentioned here can play a role in raising awareness not only of challengers and the stories of people in our communities through talks, but for the people and efforts that make such platforms possible. So the people that build these platforms and deploy them and manage them and maintain them, they're putting them on their resumes and, oh, I didn't know people here in our greater Vegas area could do these things, and here they are doing them. We still want to make our smart city smarter. And a substantial part of that whole effort by us or anyone is to remember that a city or a town or a community is its people. No people, no city, no town, no community. Just dirt. A smart city is great, a smarter city ideally greater, but an informed population is key, getting the word out, making these things and more discoverable, and generally including the people who live in a place in the goings on of that place is high on the to-do list. And that is, if the people in a place have no idea what's going on or don't know the best ways to find out what's going on or cannot be kept informed or participate in conversation in today's modernity, maybe we are not as smart a smart city as we think, but we do want to become a smarter smart city and all that implies. So the things we've talked about today fit into the general notion that if the more people know about the other people in their communities and the things that are happening and how they can be a part of it and so on, the better. The better. You don't have, doesn't mean you have to ever leave your home, but to just be able to know, or to know where to look, to have an outlet where we can recognize and celebrate achievements and participation in general. The list goes on. So that's the general idea behind the things we've talked about today. They do fit into, from a technical perspective, they fit into the other initiatives we have going on: open data capture, vLocal, MyMuni, Welcome. Open Transit is in there somewhere, but that's my favorite practical project initiative. Anyway, there's plenty of stuff to do. If only we had people who are interested. And of course, as I've said many times, we basically have to impress upon people that they are missing out. They're already missing out. You could have come to our hackathons, but you didn't, but you still can, and go from there. So recognizing and celebrating the people that are doing things in our communities, whether it's Vegas or anywhere, high on the agenda. And that's what today's episode was all about. Thank you for listening. As always, don't forget you can donate to our cause. Speaking of donations, if you visit our homepage, our expenses are very light, like I said, but if we continue to reach for the stars, maybe more than $50 would be useful per year. So think about it, ponder, and we'll catch you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.